Sometimes, exploring means encountering different aspects of the past simultaneously. I'm author and researcher Mike Luoma. On an oddly warm early November day in 2024, I headed into noted ancient stone mystery of New England, America's Stonehenge, once known as Mystery Hill, in Salem, New Hampshire. There is a great deal of stonework concentrated in this one place. It makes an impression on people. The site has been of great importance to research into New England's ancient stonework, and it's part of a larger history of antiquarian pursuits and amateur archaeology in the region. Antiquarian William B. Goodwin grew intrigued by the site in his later years, purchasing property here in the 1930s. He involved Malcolm Pearson, whose family owned the site of the Upton, Massachusetts stone chamber. Pearson would later come to own this property for a time. Then, fascinated by the site once he'd found it, Robert Stone began leasing the property in the 1950s and worked to open the site to the public. Robert Stone became the property's owner in 1964. These days, Robert's son Dennis Stone oversees this unique stone site. Dennis Stone gave an incredibly informative tour of the site, beginning with what he termed windows in a low stone row.
We were in here clearing this whole thing back about 2016, and I was working around here cleaning up brush and firewood I take home to burn, and I saw this. I said, wow, what the heck? I never noticed that before.
Some of us refer to these or similar deliberate gaps in the stonework as niches. They can be seen in low stone rows, apparently older work, throughout the region. Their actual purpose seems forgotten. Agricultural explanations vary and contradict. It is possible this is older pre-agricultural work, with the gaps aligned to significant lunar or solar events. Though trees are in the way now, Sunseeker showed the potential for summer solstice alignments, with points on the horizon, when viewed through the gaps. Or perhaps the first solstice sunrise sunlight would beam up through these niches. The potential for sky alignments seems to suggest an older, more spiritual or ritual purpose in this design. At America's Stonehenge, these niches or windows may be some of the oldest stonework still standing undisturbed. Outlying stonework at this site is likely closer to its original state than anything up on the hill, though there could still have been some alterations. It's encouraging that they're looking into these window features, as they do seem to be earlier work, left untouched and intact by virtue of hiding in plain sight. These niches or windows do often appear in what seem to be indigenous stone rows in the New England area. On this, my first visit to America's Stonehenge, I wasn't sure what to expect. Despite having read, seen, and heard about the place before, I tried to maintain an open mind. There appear to be several layers of creation or manipulation. The outer lying stonework is likely some of the oldest, with several further indigenous created layers of stonework atop and alongside it. This is followed by 17th and 18th century creation and adaptation of the earlier work, as settlers built using older stonework repurposed. Then there are later reconstruction layers, as antiquarians in the 1940s and 50s attempted to rebuild and restore what they found. While the predominant work on the hill holds a sense of artifice akin to the stone follies stonemasons build in the backyards and gardens of wealthy clients, all around, underneath the presumed later layers, other elements, apparently the remnants of authentic older work, shine through. The watchhouse chamber on the way up the hill would seem to have been earlier work. It's built off of an anchoring boulder, and Dennis Stone said there appeared to be alignments involved in its positioning.
Boulder on the right, structure built to the left. Astronomically, the next, I think it's in 2035, we have the next lunar minor standstill moonrise right over this, so we'll have to watch then. There's also a February 1st cross quarter day. And then you have this chamber, and in the back wall down there, I can see it as a quartzite stone sitting right in the middle of the structure. We've been looking at that for years.
Stone also noted the stone row attached to the watchhouse appears to have built-in undulations, often seen in apparent indigenous serpent stone rows.
But inside that, we also found artifacts. One was a bone with a, we showed pictures of that with a drill hole, and the other one was stone, and they're on display in the building.
Though used for other purposes over time, the construction style and serpent row context makes this a likely candidate for indigenous origins. It's in a different style than much of what we see further up the hill. Especially as the first section we come to was settled by the Patty family, who built, adapted, and sold the stonework for their own ends and means, using the stonework for foundations and storage. What must it have been like to live here day to day, every day, amidst all this stonework? What did the Patty family house look like? Why does it look like the Pattys adopted something older that was here before them? How much of the original stonework did Seth Patty sell off? Just a few unanswered questions. There's also mention that the caves here housed poor folks, and possibly people fleeing enslavement on the Underground Railroad before the U.S. Civil War. Above the family area, the stonework gets very interesting, and possibly more reconstructed. Some of the difficulty in attempting to determine who built this stonework stems from controversial restoration work done to the hilltop stonework at the direction of antiquarian William B. Goodwin, mentioned earlier, who owned the site for a time in the early to mid-20th century. Accounts vary as to how much the rebuilding changed the stonework. Some claim there was wholesale reconstruction. Others insist the amount done was exaggerated. To my eyes, the squared-off edges and flattened tops of the stone assemblages betray a Eurocentric rebuilding bias. But there are places where more organic work is preserved, displaying some of the original flow of the courses in the restoration. showing perhaps an attempt was indeed made to simply lift the stones from where they fell and place them back up in their proper places as if reassembling a puzzle, as some contend the restorers did. I don't believe the same can be said of the many standing stones, however, whose placement often struck me as a bit dubious. This slightly set-apart south-facing chamber on the hilltop has seen numerous restorations and stabilizations over the years. There's likely no telling how old it truly is. As we headed for the oracle chamber and the sacrificial table, Dennis Stone pointed out a rare two-story stone construct built right next to them.
Mr. Goodwin called it the solarium, the double-deck solarium, where a priest or an abbot could stay. The sun comes up here, warms him up, part of meditation, part of a ceremony perhaps. And again, it's just all, kind of speculation.
Names like the Sacrificial Table and the Oracle Chamber date back to those reconstruction efforts of Goodwin and others. We don't know if this was a sacrificial table. Some suggest it was used processing lye for soap or for an apple cider press. One short end of the groove-topped stone abuts the wall of a stone chamber. Beneath the table, there's a slightly flared opening to a small, squarish passage which runs through the entire thickness of the chamber wall to an opening in the inside wall of the chamber. When you speak into that opening, it's said your voice carries and can be heard outside at the table, where you'd be heard as some kind of disembodied voice. That's why they call it the oracle chamber. We can no longer see this demonstrated as the table is now off limits, having suffered damage from vandalism a few years ago. We can see the opening to the small voice passageway inside of the oracle chamber. The chamber is T-shaped. The voice passageway opening found roughly in the center of the top bar of the T, above what seems to be a helpful step. This rough notebook sketch shows the general layout of the chamber. The entrance to the top crossbar passage is on its left side. The right end is closed, with a now open but once shuttered vent in the chamber roof above the closed right end. Dennis Stone pointed out several of the chamber's features.
Oh, it has two drains, one at the entrance, it's silted in now where those people are out there, and that drain. It has 5 closets. That might be more of a niche there, but I call it a closet nevertheless. And then there are 4 more down in this part of the chamber. There's a bench seat in here, right down in here. You could put about 3 people there. This is a speaking tube or oracle tube, so the structure gets its name from the oracle chamber. And this goes through to the sacrificial table about 6 feet. So we have this tube, the step is right where I'm standing today. It's just part of the bedrock that they didn't quarry out. The rest of it they removed probably in some of these walls today. And they left this here, so somebody around 5.5 feet, I'm almost 5'7", can stand here and speak. The outside of this, due to vandalism in 2019, Pete Wiggins, who's here, helped us do all the repairs. It took 2 months to repair everything from the vandalism. But we found the outside of the speaking tube is flared like a trumpet, clarinet, or for acoustical purposes, we think it's kind of flared out. So below it, which you may not see, I get my flashlight out, anybody, is actually a 8-foot tunnel that goes underneath with a window. And you're standing there not probably seeing it if you haven't been here before. And you can see the window there. So there's a few windows on the site too, besides the walls. I think there's 4 windows on the main site. That's one. You can see that goes in there. It's about 8 feet from this point. Yeah. What would they use that for a farm? I have no clue. Or this, or that step.
Several small alcoves and niches are built into the chamber walls, along the crossbar passage and along the lower passage, whose exit is on the lower left side of the descending bar of the T. There is a petroglyph, now highlighted, on a stone in the chamber wall opposite the lower passage exit. On the hilltop, next to the groove-top table and the oracle chamber, a viewing platform has been built so that visitors can look out around the hilltop and see the many alignment stones and the proposed lunar, solar, and stellar alignments seemingly present in the encircling stone rows. These apparent alignments inspired the name America's Stonehenge. It wasn't that this stonework looked like the original Stonehenge, but rather that it functioned in a similar astronomical way. And though I'm not a fan of using European terms to describe what may potentially be indigenous work, I can understand the explanatory shorthand employed to describe the site's larger function. Given the stonework's blended, restored, and reconstructed history, maybe it's best not to worry too much about what it's called, especially if the name keeps visitors coming and supports the preservation of the site. Dennis Stone released a book on the site earlier this year, America's Stonehenge, The Stone Ruins of New Hampshire. He was an excellent guide and knows the site inside and out. Enormous thanks to Dennis, to General Manager James Lacefield, and the staff at America's Stonehenge. You can learn more about America's Stonehenge, including how to visit, at stonehengeusa.com. You can also join my Facebook group, watch more videos on my YouTube channel, or pick up my book, Ancient Stone Mysteries of New England. Details at ancientstonemysteries.com. I'm Mike Luoma. Thank you for experiencing America's Stonehenge with me.